Hello, my name is Dr. Megan Becker, and I'm the Associate Director of Residential Life at Virginia Commonwealth University. I'm excited to be here with you today to review the job search process and your non-negotiables. I've titled the presentation, Not Shying Away from Your Non-Negotiables, Ways to Discover Them and How to Ask for Them. We're going to spend our time today reviewing the learning outcomes, reviewing what is a non-negotiable, spending some time identifying what your non-negotiables are, doing some reflective exercises, preparing for the job search, advocating for yourself during the job search, and then I'll wrap up with some concluding thoughts, and then also share my references. All right, the learning outcomes. Participants will be able to identify a list of their own non-negotiable elements in their job search. Participants will be able to understand how to ascertain information related to these non-negotiables throughout their job search. And participants will be able to confidently articulate non-negotiables in their job search. Non-negotiables are things you will not negotiate on. They follow your values and principles and define not only what you will and won't accept from others, but also what you will and won't accept from yourself. They are the big time deal breakers. Do you know your job non-negotiables? Key to career contentment is getting your non-negotiables met. So some of the non-negotiables, when you do the research, some of the words and phrases that come up are really around promotability. Is this a job that I'd be able to continue to move up in the ranks? Some of the other things are incentives. What are those incentives that I will get for taking this job? Flexible work schedule. It tends to be a most recent thing that employees are looking for. And that can be anywhere from flexible work hours to related more to health in regards to, is there flexible work environments, standing desks, etc. Then also you hear things like variety. Is there different things within the position that I can do? Prestige. What will I get if I take this position? Also, is there travel required? Both positively and negatively. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you're in a position where you can't travel a lot. Those are good things to know, and those can be non-negotiables. What's the work difficulty? Are you going to be challenged in the position? And then also job security. Whether or not that is something that is important to you, but these are things that definitely come up when people are brainstorming their list of things that they are looking for in a position. Now, specifically thinking around housing professionals, many of the non-negotiables tend to be around what is offered within a compensation package for an entry-level professional. Such things are on-campus living arrangement. What are you allowed to have in your apartment? Are you allowed to have someone live in your apartment with you? Do you have an interior or an exterior door to your apartment? What is the salary of the position? Maybe you need to do a budget and determine what is the lowest salary that you'd be able to do and still be able to survive. Can you have a pet? Is there a pet policy? What are the professional development opportunities? Is there funding that's afforded in this compensation package? What's the office culture? Are you going to be able to fit in that office culture? Maybe you're location bound, so geography is a non-negotiable for you. Maybe your work environment, like I mentioned, office culture, maybe your supervisor is really important to you. Maybe you need to know whether or not, what experiences they have. Are they able to mentor you down the road? And then also thinking about, is moving expenses something that you need to have as part of your compensation package? All right, moving on to some reflection time. So one of the things that's really important in the job search process is that you provide some time to reflect. You need to really truly understand what are your non-negotiables and really understand and challenge yourself not to fold when the perfect job description comes up and you're unfortunately not able to take it because of salary. You don't want to sacrifice those things that are your non-negotiables. So here's one way that you can go through a reflection process. This is not the only way, but one of the ways that I wanted to make sure that I covered as an option to really think through what your non-negotiables are. So where I typically work with my staff on is step one. What are my basic needs? These examples listed here are not necessarily going to be under the right category for you. It's going to be individual. And so maybe something that I've listed here under basic needs is actually under step 3 for you. But once again, this is just an example. So some of those basic needs, once again, I mentioned budget earlier, maybe a certain specific salary is a basic need for you. So based off of your bills and monthly expenses, maybe you need to find a position with a salary of minimally $38,000. And so if you look at a position description and they've posted a position at $36,500, well, it's close to $38,000, but once again, that's $1,500 short and could have a larger ripple effect on you personally, even though it might be the perfect job. And so you got to determine where those sacrifices you're willing to do. But if you listed it as a basic need, then that's not something that you can really fold on. And then once you've identified those basic needs, then you'd move on to step 2. Well, what are those things beyond the basic needs that I'd really like that would help me be successful if I could get them? Those things would be office culture, supervisor, professional development funds. And then kind of that third step, what would be those things to really help me thrive in a position? Well, maybe you're really excited to move off campus and you're looking for having a pet for the first time. So maybe a pet policy would be the icing on the cake for you. Maybe it's moving expenses. Maybe you are able to afford moving without that being part of your compensation package. However, it'd be really great if it could be something that they could offer so that you're not going into debt. Once again, this is just one way of reflecting on and identifying what your non-negotiables are. Choosing a job/career is a big thing that becomes a part of your lifestyle. And a lot of time is spent in this position. So knowing that helps you figure out what you're willing and not willing to bend or break regarding your personal values and interests. Once again, let's go back to, we've done this reflection. Now it's time to develop your list of non-negotiables. Another way that I really encourage staff to look at ways to make a list is having, a sheet of paper and developing those columns. So that column of basic needs, must-haves. What do I must have in this job? And then that middle column of what would be those extra perks for me to be successful, and then dream job for me to thrive in my career. So once again, those must-haves this is the list of must-haves, your non-negotiables that you will not deviate from and decline a job opportunity if it does not include them. Those extra perks. Well, this is the list of must-haves plus a few extra perks beyond your list of non-negotiables. And once again, dream job. This is the list of must-haves and everything you dreamed of for your career. When it comes to career success, and more importantly, career fulfillment, it's important to know what you're looking for. Everyone has a different version of what success and fulfillment really mean to them. So I share that from the perspective of these reflection exercises, these lists to identify your non-negotiables are going to look different. Everyone's is going to look different. This is just a couple strategies to help you really start thinking about how to identify these. So moving on to the second part of the presentation. Do you know how to prepare for your job search? Key to a successful job search is knowing your non-negotiables before you begin searching. So once again, you've got to do this first part before you even start searching for positions. You need to know what is really important to you at the core. It's easy to pick your non-negotiables. It's not as easy to find an employer willing to give them to you. Of course, the better an employee and the more thorough a job searcher you are, the more likely you can get what you want. This quote really resonated with me because ultimately, at the end of the day, it should be easy to pick your non-negotiables. You should know exactly what salary you need to be able to survive. You should know whether or not you're location bound. You should know whether or not you have a need to be able to have a live-on partner. What's the difficult part is to be able to identify those positions and identify those employers that are willing to be able to work with you to fill those basic needs. So the next step of conducting that job search is doing your research. And that can be really difficult. Navigating institutional and department websites over and over again can be extremely difficult and daunting. There's tons of information out there, and you can get things confusing. And so I highly recommend that you find a good way to organize yourself, to write down this information and ensure that you're able to really understand what information matched with what institution and what position description. So make sure you keep yourself organized. All right, so some helpful tips in terms of doing website searches to be able to help you identify your non-negotiables throughout this process. So once again, you should have that list of non-negotiables, and then you're utilizing these searches to help identify whether or not they are found in your position that you're looking at or found in the institution that you're looking at. And so some of the things that I definitely recommend to staff is to look for these things. So when you're looking at a website, definitely look for that About Us section. That's where you're going to find a little bit more information about the staff, as well as just maybe some of the office culture. It's also going to be important to look for an organizational chart. Are they forward facing in regards to who reports to who? Is that information clear so that folks can navigate how to get in touch with folks? In addition, vision, mission, and values of both the department and the institution are going to be really important, because at the end of the day, those core values are typically going to be what aligns to your non-negotiables and some of your own values to determine whether or not that's a best fit and match of a position. In addition, recruitment information, as you can see over here on this example, this institution was able to create a recruitment site where they specifically talk about their employment opportunities. That information being forward-facing tells you a lot of things in regards to their communication style and being transparent about that information. Also, good things to look for. What are the resources for students on websites? How easy is it to navigate as a student to find the information that they're looking for? If the information's out there for students, typically information is also going to be forward-facing for employees when working for a department as well. Lots of things you can learn about in terms of the resources and information put out by an institution. And then also, always a good thing to check out is a student newspaper. You can learn a lot about the student body from the articles that they write. In addition, through that student newspaper, if they have an online version, it'd be great to do a search about the department that you're doing a job search for. What kind of articles have been written about the department? Is there a lot of student feedback about that department? Are they upset about housing rates? Are they upset about policy changes, etc.? It's a great way to get a pulse on the students and how they feel about living on campus. So while preparing for the interview, one of the things is if you learn through your research that your basic needs will not be met, then you should remove yourself from the process. So if, once again, like I talked about, if that salary is not there, or if one of your basic needs is that you need to have a live-in partner, but that department doesn't have a partner policy, then it's really important that you step out of that process. Sometimes you hear candidates talk about, well, I'm just going to continue to go through the interview to get interview practice. That's not fair to you, and it's also not fair to the employer. It's important that if a position truly isn't meeting your needs from the get-go, then you remove yourself from that process. Going back to those non-negotiables, were your basic needs met? If your basic needs were met, number one, then you're going to want to proceed. So if you're still excited and that initial research shows that your non-negotiables will be met, then it's time to really prepare for that next step. So if you get that phone call, you can be ready for that phone interview. So some things to do in terms of preparing for phone interview questions. I always like to recommend that you prepare at least one question that helps affirm your research about your non-negotiables. Helps answer an unanswered question from your research related to your non-negotiables. And then in addition, prepare additional questions that gives you a better sense for department values and provides you an understanding of what they are looking for in a candidate. Those 4 things are going to be a good amount of questions to have prepared for that phone interview. And ultimately, it's going to give you a lot of information if you're able to ask all 4 questions to determine whether or not you want to proceed in that process with an institution. Another, I think, important thing to think about throughout this process, and another way that you can learn about whether or not your non-negotiables would be met from a job, is to really listen during a phone interview. Phone interviews can be incredibly nerve-wracking. However, it's important while you're answering the employer's questions, you need to ask yourself, do the employees sound distracted? Maybe. But then also when the tables flip and it's your turn to ask questions and you're listening, you want to ask yourself, do the employees seem to enjoy their role or their employer? Making sure that they're not bad talking, because that's probably not going to be a good office culture to enter if that's truly how they're answering your questions. Also, do their answers align with your values and non-negotiables? Do things seem to fit, right? Were they able to answer your non-negotiables? Were they able to determine such as whether or not there's professional development funds or moving expenses, if you need to know that on the front end? And then once again, some of the other things that you can do to prepare on the front end is to connect with your network, to continue to learn, to determine whether or not a position is going to meet your non-negotiable list. So reaching out to someone, do you know someone who went to school at that institution, works at that school, has been supervised by those leaders in the department, or has interned for the department? These are going to be really key things, connecting with your network. A lot of job searches are really built upon people knowing people. And so it's a lot to be said for getting to know how others have enjoyed their experience at that institution, and maybe connecting you to someone to be able to learn a little bit more about whether or not that would be a good fit for you. So once again, going back to those non-negotiables, so through your research of the website, preparing for a phone interview, participating in the phone interview, listening during that phone interview to determine whether or not those needs are going to be met, and then connecting with your network. And then you'd really have a good sense for, all right, my basic needs have been met. And it definitely sounds like those additional things to make me successful would be met. So if you got those 2 things, then it's going to be really important that you move forward to the next process, because it sounds like things are aligning for you in that job search. So the third part is, do you know how to advocate for yourself in the job search? Key to self-advocacy in the job search is making your non-negotiables known. So self-advocacy, it's really important to be upfront about your basic needs. Also, inquire about additional information or documents to support your basic needs, such as, one of the examples I like to use a lot is there additional policies or documents that accompany such things as like a partner policy on that campus that you're looking to be recruited to. So you definitely need to have someone live with you in the residence hall because you're married or you have a partner. It's going to be important to ask specific questions about those policies to determine whether or not the university has specific rules about needing to be married to live with one another in the residence halls. Or, is it more of an open type policy where a partner or someone that you decide to live with you just needs to pass a background check. So it's really important that, yes, you may see in that job description or that recruitment posting that an institution offers a partner policy, but you're going to want to make sure you ask specifics so that you're not making assumptions and then find out on the back end that things aren't going to work out and or meet your non-negotiables. Third, ask additional questions about the things that will help you succeed and thrive in a position. So in that wrap-up meeting for that interview, it's going to be really important to talk about future opportunities. It's going to be important to ask such questions such as, traditionally, as entry-level professionals wrap up their first position, are there future opportunities at the institution to continue to work there? Or are there going to be opportunities to move within the department? Is there going to be opportunities to be mentored to move on, to other institutions? Really important to ask about what those future opportunities are to continue to figure out whether or not you succeed or thrive in that type of position. Also, this is a great time during that meeting to ask ways to offset personal expenses, such as professional development funds. Is that something that they can offer staff? In addition, moving expenses, another great time to ask these questions, because you never really want to be in a position where you forgot to ask those questions. Many housing professionals are used to answering these questions, so it may be nerve-wracking to ask them on the front end, but if they are on your non-negotiable list, it's really important to ask that, because once again, you're not going to want to cave, and this is the time for you to self-advocate to make sure that you're getting what you need out of this position. Ultimately, you could hear no to some of these questions as their answers. And no is a really difficult thing to hear. But at the end of the day, no is an answer. And no is something that's okay. It may be disappointing, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's an answer. And it's better to have that answer than not have that answer. So once again, we come back to that non-negotiable list. Were your needs met? And ultimately, hopefully, if you've done what you needed to do in terms of reflecting and identifying what your needs are, if you spent some time doing your research, and now you've spent some time through that interview process, really determining these three things: basic needs, things you need to be successful, and will you be able to thrive? And if all three are there, then you've done a really good job of determining whether or not this is a position for you. Your non-negotiables evolve over time. Give yourself permission to reevaluate as circumstances change. Be as flexible and as dynamic as necessary. So here are my references. Once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate spending time with you. And if you have any questions, my contact information is here. And I've really appreciated the opportunity to be able to share this information and wisdom with you today. Thanks.